Let's welcome in the general manager of the Buffalo Bills at this time. Joining us on the line right now, it is one Brandon Beane. Brandon, congrats on another good draft class. This is kind of the capper on your calendar year in terms of all the work that you and your staff put in. So I'm sure you're breathing considerably easier that now, although the work is never done, is it?
No, it's we're always looking, and now's the time where teams are still making adjustments to their roster. Some based on maybe a guy they've got a high cap number for, and they drafted someone high that they didn't want to release them till they saw what they got in the draft, and now they're comfortable moving on. So yeah, I think over the next 4 or 5 weeks there'll still be some movement, and we'll definitely be scouring the waiver wire to see what comes available, if there's a guy that we think could compete to start or just be a back end depth piece for us.
Which side of that coin are you on? Are there guys on your roster you got to move on from because of the finances, or you're talking to them, or are you still out there shopping in the veteran free agent market?
I'm in the shopping market, Steve.
Right.
I got a small bank account though.
Yeah,
right. So
you're in the clearance aisle, right?
yeah. I'm not at the Mercedes-Benz dealership.
Yeah,
I can
right.
tell you that.
There you go.
Hey, I know a guy.
Yeah, I heard you did.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that, but let's talk a little bit about that. You got to be. I mean, you guys were pretty disciplined in your board. You were a little surprised. You took 2 defensive linemen, then 2 offensive linemen. So it's obvious that you weren't like positional shopping. You were player shopping. And now you're not really in that same constraint because you got the whole market to look into. What are your thoughts now about where you head next?
Yeah, I mean, we did follow the board, Steve. And like I said, you'd love to say, hey, here's 6 or 7 positions, we're going to check them all off. But it just doesn't. I mean, it can work that way, but that's not how I believe it should be done. And so we stuck to the board, and now we'll just, like I said, we'll continue to look and see what's out there, and we want competition at every position. We think we've added that prior to the draft, and then obviously the players that we added this past weekend. So we want to make it hard as heck to be on that 53, and I've just found that the successful teams that I've been on, when you were struggling to pick that 53-man roster, that was usually a team that was tough for others to deal with.
Brandon, we should congratulate you on zagging when everybody wanted to predict you to zig with respect to trading up, finally trading down in a draft to buck the trend, shall we say. But I thought your reasoning behind it was very interesting on day 3, because you talked about trying to add picks where you could, knowing that potentially the undrafted free agent market might be more difficult for you because your roster is so strong and deep. And it might make some people more reluctant to sign with you guys, knowing how hard it would be to make this roster. So maybe just walk us through that line of thinking and when it really came into focus. Was it strictly a day 3 thing, or were you even considering that on day 2?
We were considering at all points. I mean, there were, we thought there was good depth through the early rounds. We probably had our most players in the 3rd round on our board. And so we did think there was some guys in the middle of this draft that could really come in and, if not be a starter, be a contributor and a guy that could grow into a starting role in time, maybe in a future year. But as we got later in the draft, Chris, it really came down to, some conversations we had with agents about players that, hey, if he doesn't get drafted, would he consider coming here? And a lot of those conversations were, well, we're gonna have to see. Like, I got to find the best spot for him. And certain positions, we got some guys that we think can come in and compete. Some others we were going to strike out. And so we just decided to. I mean, honestly, talked about even trading back and getting another pick, but couldn't find the right situation, or we liked the guy that was on the board. So honestly, we were just trying to get as many guys however we could do it, with a late draft pick or recruiting them as a free agent, that can come in here, compete for a 53, and if not make the 53, at least be a guy you'd be excited to have on your practice squad. I mean, With the rules now in practice squad, being able to elevate 2 players a week, it's very important to have as strong of a practice squad as you can, with injuries and things like that.
What was the moment in this year's draft where you felt the most anxious about being in the right spot or maybe having to move? Or when was the most desperate or unsettled time in your draft room? During which of the 3 days and at what point?
Yeah, I mean, it was, the fourth round was tough. Like I said, when we got to the third, I was hoping that, as I told the media, we had a deal in place when we took Boogie Basham, because I just didn't think he was going to be there. And if he wasn't there, we were going to trade back. And we had what we thought was a solid deal for both teams, and for us to go back and acquire an extra pick. And I was excited about either one. I'm going, okay, if we get Basham, that's my first choice. But if not, we've got a good plan in place here that we can add what I think will be value. So then we get to the third round pick, and we had a really good value on Spencer, and same thing. If he was there, we were going to take him. But part of me, then after we took him, I was like, man, it still would have been great if I could have found a way to add someone early in the fourth. There were some guys coming off in that round that we had, third round grades on, and some of them high third round grades, but it just, we were finally paying our sins for the Diggs trade and got that done. And once we got to the fifth and had those two, it allowed us to take a player and then add some late picks there.
Well, before we go any further, let me absolve you of your sins for the Diggs trade. You're totally forgiven.
Yeah, I think he gets a pass.
I love draft picks. Yes. It's so hard. It's so hard, but no, that was definitely worth it.
Brandon, one thing that kind of came out of this draft after we kind of looked a little deeper into each of the players, there was an astounding amount of player connections between the guys you drafted and players currently on your roster, whether it was the fact that Boogie Basham and A.J. Epinesa were acquaintances. Tommy Doyle's first start in college at left tackle was against A.J. when they played each other. You've got DeMar and Dane Jackson, who are not only former teammates at Pitt, but they grew up in the same neighborhood. Marquez was roommates with Ed Oliver, was Tre'Davious White's younger brother's best friend. I mean, some of these were uncanny, but my question to you is, did you take advantage of some of those connections with these players to kind of do some extra drill down type background work with some of those connections that you had?
Not really. We definitely knew most of those connections before it started. I didn't know that Ed had roomed with Marquez Stevenson. I was unaware of that, but we knew that he knew Tre'Davious' brother. Didn't know if he really knew Trey or not, but came from the same neighborhood. So it's funny, he had two connections. And then, yeah, you're right. We knew about AJ and Boogie playing AAU basketball together. And it's fun when those stories work out, especially for rookie players versus guys that are already on our roster. But, we go into character a lot. And so we definitely made sure each of these guys was a fit and that would come in here, and wherever they are now as a college player, they all have ceilings, some higher than others, but that's important for us. Is this guy going to do what it takes to reach that ceiling? And we feel like this class that very confident that pretty much all these guys are going to come in here and be pros and really ascend, as time goes on. Some will not have to play right away. Some will, and we'll see how it goes when they get in here.
Well, as this roster fills out and you get deeper into the off season, what do you know about what that's going to look like? We had just a brief conversation before you came on. Juwan James, the right tackle for the Broncos, popped his Achilles working out by himself because there's all this stuff about opting out and all of that. What about the voluntary nature of the workouts coming in? When's that going to start? What do you and Sean anticipate the Buffalo Bills offseason to look like, and when's it going to start?
Yeah, we're still in phase one, and I think most of our guys are choosing to work out like a lot of the league, last year remotely. And our guys have done a great job in the meeting rooms, and they've that's still all voluntary. And they've been working with Eric Ciano on the workout plan. We would love for them to be here. We do have guys here, and the guys that are here are getting great attention from our staff. They're getting more attention than they even normally would because you only have so few here. But we're hoping that we get into phase 2, Steve, that more will start to show up as we can now. The rules will change that you can start to get on the grass with them. It's limited rules, but and then we'd love to have everybody by phase 3 because you can't replace those reps, but it is voluntary in nature, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's a CBA deal, and we still don't know who and how many are going to show up, but our doors are open, and we'll keep hoping that one by one they trickle in here the rest of May and hopefully by June.
Talking to Bills GM Brandon Beane, and Brandon, I know you guys picked up the 5th-year options on both Tremaine and Josh, and you've been very upfront, I think, publicly about the fact that the organization and Josh and you're all on the same page. You want to get an extension done in due course. The question here is I don't even want to call it a stumbling block. The thing that's out there that is unknown is what the cap's going to look like next year. And there's still some uncertainty behind that. How much of an issue is that in your guys' budgeting and figuring everything out? Because this is not a simple extension. This is a franchise quarterback we're talking about. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but how imperative is it to have at least a firm grasp as to what that number is going to be to get things done with Josh?
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably, until we get into the fall and see how many people are in these seats, are they half full, 3/4 full, what it is, it should definitely be better than this past year. But that could affect whether the number's 192 or 200. And so there's still going to be, we're probably going to have to hopefully find a structure if we're able to reach some type of agreement where there's some flexibility in next season's cap number for Josh. And that's where, hopefully his representatives will work with us understanding the unknown hurdle that we're facing right now. And again, I mentioned it on the radio the other day this is hard picking up 2 guys at $36 million because when we drafted them, the CBA was different. And these guys both got increases of what we anticipated their 5th-year number to be based on making Pro Bowls. And, we're proud of them. We love them doing that. But fitting 2 in when the cap goes down has made it really hard for us to navigate that. So it definitely will be important in the structure. It won't mess with the APY or the guarantee, Chris, but it will be important how we structure these first few years to make sure we can, as this cap works its way back to where it should be, hopefully by 23, 24.
Just on the horizon, it was just reported by Aaron Bessiker that baseball's reopening, and the governor of New York State says that vaccinated people can have normal capacity and normal seating at stadiums. So if they're doing that
for baseball,
so if they're doing that in New York State here in May, you got to think by September you're going to be able to sell out the home games and have it more back to normal, which will help the cap. And, it all goes into the pot for what you've got to get done financially with your players. But it's going to be a much different landscape coming into this next season than it was during the pandemic. You've got to have real optimistic hopes about that.
Yeah, I'm excited that where we're at now from a fan standpoint, a year ago, talking to you guys, there was uncertainty whether there'd be a season, and the league did a heck of a job, the players, everybody, to pull off the 256 plus the playoffs. So it's exciting, just the 6,700 fans we had for those playoff games was exciting. So now we're talking about if you're vaccinated, the potential that you can not have to social distance at games, that's huge. And hopefully, fortunately, we still have until August for preseason and then September till it really counts. So I hope we have every seat filled here.
I realize, Brandon, you guys are probably still waiting for some undrafted free agent contracts to come back before everybody's signed, sealed, and delivered. But is your number, based on what you had said about, how it might be a little more difficult to recruit guys, do you have your numbers where you want them for the most part in terms of that portion of your roster here, knowing rookie camp's about a week away?
Yeah, I think we're probably, these guys will have to come in and take physicals. We've got some workouts lined up next week. We'll probably be by the end of the mini camp, I'd say 84 to 87, depending on these guys. And we'll be able to go up to 91 because of the Christian Wade exception. One of the things we're doing research on is, last year the league made us and the union to reduce our rosters down to 80 to start camp instead of 90. There's been some uncertainty whether, it could be a different number than 90. Is it 85? Is it 80? So we're going to try and monitor that before we push the roster up to 90 as well.
Yeah, because I saw there was a write-up out of New England that the Patriots really aren't participating much at all in signing undrafted rookie free agents right away. So it seems like they're kind of holding their water on that too. That's a very interesting development. You got to. It seems like they're changing stuff on you guys all the time, and you got to pivot like at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, a lot of teams wasted money signing some of these, these young players after the draft last year, and it's unfortunate because there were some players that we thought, had we been able to keep them around. Fortunately, like Antonio Williams, we had to cut him right away to get down, and just from a numbers standpoint. But fortunately, we were able to get him back. But there were some that we weren't able to get back, and obviously, selfishly, we wanted all 90. But I felt really bad for some of these kids that you're talking 10 a club, that 320 players. I guarantee you, there's some players in there that, had they been able to go to camp, would have made a roster. And it's just, I hope for the league that we keep it at 90. It's very important. And this year we're going to be playing preseason games.
Right.
And last year we weren't doing that. Injuries will happen. We know that when you're playing those games. So going with 80 this year could be very problematic, because all of a sudden you get a run on injuries at a position. You've got to either injury settle and replace them, or you've got to play starters longer. So I hope that they come to a resolution at some point and we get it up to 90, but we'll see how that goes.
What do you anticipate the protocols to be going through there? Are you guys going to be testing every day? It was like getting up and brushing your teeth in the morning. You were getting tested. It was amazing. You're right. I think the biggest win for the NFL last year was getting all 256 games. And I've said it, I think it was the most underrated accomplishment in all of professional sports, was the league getting it all in. But how much of that's going to carry over to this year, and how tough is it going to be just to get up and rolling again?
Yeah, the early indications are that if you're vaccinated, and that means fully vaccinated, means you've been 2 weeks since your second shot, that you're going to have to probably test once a week. But if you're not, then you'd have to test every day like we did last year. Still unsure about the masking, how that will go. I think there's going to be some incentives to, if you have X number of % of your players and staff vaccinated, you can live normal, let's just call it, back to the old days. If you don't, it's going to look more like last year. Social distant meetings, encourage as many to be virtual, mask in the building, maybe even mask on the sideline. A lot of that still to be determined, but I hope that, if those are the rules, that we'll be able to get enough people vaccinated and not have to deal with all the headaches from a year ago.
Right. So if you're one player away from the ratio from living normal or having everybody to be tested, do you just cut a guy that's not vaccinated?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I would, because it'd be an advantage, honestly.
Absolutely.
Steve. We're laughing, but these meetings were not as productive as before, because we had, you guys saw it in the field house. We had 3 and 4 meetings going on, and sometimes you're talking over each other, but it was the only way to pull it off and be socially distant. So it would be an advantage to cut a player and fall under that umbrella.
Last one for me, and I know this is a little bit off the radar. It's in the back burner right now. But the 2022 draft class, as compared to this one was, accounts was small. It was like 600 guys coming out, kind of eligible. Next year, you're going to have like 9,000 guys in the draft pool. So those draft picks seem to me would be a little bit more valuable. But what are your thoughts about next year's draft, what that's going to look like in the wake of what we've seen over the last 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like, and this is early. I mean,
Right.
I don't know a lot about this class, to be honest with you, other than some guys that we were looking at that we thought may come out and that went back. But the guys that were getting back grades, top 3, 4 rounds, they came out this year. So I don't think that number is going to be different. I think the third day draft picks, though, those 5th, 6th, 7th, and free agents, I think there's going to be a lot in that pool. Which, listen, you can still find very good players. You look at it every year. I think I saw a stat the other day that in the conference championship games, the 4 teams had 28 starters from the 5th through 7th round, something like that, which was
Right.
as many or more than any other round. So
Yeah.
it's just, I do think it'll be a heavier volume of players we've got to work through and get situated. I don't know if the first 2 days will get moved a lot.
Brandon, as always, thanks for the time. We hope the weather improves for you so you can get some well-deserved time off and hit them straight out there on the tracks.
I know I got to catch Steve. I know he's well ahead of me right now.
You owe me money. All right. Thanks, man.
I always do.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That's Bills GM Brandon Beane putting a capper on the draft for us.